Let's take a minute and we'll walk through the System Settings menu on the AVIC-7000NEX. To get to the System Settings, we'll touch the gears here, and we want the toolbox, which is our System Settings. First up is our navigation-related settings here. We have a couple of things to work with. First is the navigation info window. Right now that is switched on. We can switch that off, and that is information across the bottom of the screen when you're in the AV mode. Next is our AV app guide mode. This is getting navigation information on the screen when you're on an AV or an app screen, and we have the option to switch that on or off as well. Let's go back up. Next are our AV source settings. And for more information on mix tracks, you can check out the mix tracks video. There's one setting inside here, and that is the flash pattern, and we have a number of different patterns to choose from when we're using mix tracks. We'll go back up. Next up are our radio settings, and for more information on the HD radio tuner, you can check out the HD radio video. We have a number of settings inside here, blending, our seek and local seek settings. Next up is Sirius Xm, and again, you can check out the Sirius Xm video for more information on Sirius Xm and the alerts and parental controls inside the Sirius Xm system. Next up is our tag forwarding, and if we have created a tag on Sirius Xm or on HD radio, that tag will be forwarded to USB 1 or USB 2, depending on where you tend to connect up your iPod. You can switch that right here. Next up is Bluetooth audio as a source. So when we use the drop-down source list, Bluetooth audio can be in that list, or we can switch Bluetooth audio off so it won't be in the list. For right now, I want to leave that on because I like Bluetooth audio. I use that pretty regularly. All right, let's go back up. Next up is our Ever Scroll setting. And Ever Scroll means that when we have text on the screen like MP3 information or HD radio information, it will continuously scroll across the screen if we have that turned on. If Ever Scroll is turned off, we'll only see it once or twice and then the scrolling will stop. Next is our input and output settings. This is a very important set here. Our smartphone setup. We have a number of different ways to connect smartphones into the system. And when we change those connections, different options will be available here depending on the phone and the connection type you've chosen. So we can choose between an iPhone or an iPod, or we can choose to connect other phones, which would be Android devices and other devices. Once you've chosen your type of device, you need to choose the type of connection that you'll be using. We can choose USB, HDMI, or wireless through Bluetooth. We'll leave that as USB for right now. We'll go back up. Next is our AV input setting. This is an important setting if you want to use the AV input as a source or as a second camera in the system, and you can make that choice right here. If you choose off, AV input will not show up in your source list and you'll have no second camera in the system. So we'll switch that to camera for right now. Next up is our auxiliary input, and this will let us choose to have auxiliary input in our source list, or if you switch that off, you won't have auxiliary input in the source list. And we'll leave that on for right now. Then we have our app radio video adjustment. If you have a compatible iPhone or Android phone connected to the 7000 operating in app mode, you'll be able to adjust the video screen for the apps. We'll go back up. Next is our camera settings. You can get full information on the camera settings. Check out the camera settings videos. We'll scroll down a little further here. We can switch the demo mode on and off from this position right here. Next is our system language, and we have a number of languages to choose from here. If you can't read any of these other languages, I recommend that you keep that on English. Here we can restore the settings to factory default, and we have a number of different things that we can choose from to restore those settings to factory default, or all of them if you want to. And that will be the way the radio came from the factory. We can change our keyboard language. Right now it's set to English. That can change to any number of different languages. The beep tone right now is turned on, and you can hear the beep when I touch the screen. You can choose to switch that beep tone off if you want to. I like that confirmation that I've touched the screen, so I'm going to leave that on. Next is our picture adjustment. And our picture adjustment is for our AV source screen, our rear view camera, and our second camera. And we have individual color adjustment and brightness adjustments for each of those sources. We'll go back up. Next is our touch panel calibration, and I'm not going to touch that button right now. If you choose the touch panel calibration, The system will go through a calibration process where you have to touch the corners of the screen and double tap the screen at certain times. Here's our system information. This is a number of very important things for installation of the in-dash radio. This is our firmware information that will tell you what version of firmware you have for navigation and Bluetooth and so forth. And this will also let you know if you need to do an upgrade to that firmware. We'll go back up. Here's where we could initiate a firmware update from an SD card or from a USB if we were going to do that. Next up is our 3D calibration status used for the navigation portion of the system. Here the system will learn it from distance and speed pulse information it gathers from the car. We can also reset the system and it's learning from this screen. We'll go back up. And finally here is our connection status. And connection status gives us information about our GPS antenna and the information we're receiving from GPS, and speed pulse information, illumination information, and our iDataLink Maestro information if we have that option installed. We'll go back up and one more. And lastly is our OEM settings, and if we have an iDataLink Maestro system connected into the 7000, we'll have options here inside the OEM settings. You can hit the X to escape.